for the 76ers. Stephen Anthony, what do you make of this move?
I don't like it, but I want to be fair because, listen, I certainly wasn't enamored with the job that Mike D'Antoni was doing in New York, but at the same time, I don't want to vilify the man. I think he knows a thing or two about basketball. I don't ignore, nor have I forgotten the fact that he averaged 58 wins a season in his 4 full years coaching the Phoenix Suns. It helped that he had Steve Nash, two-time league MVP, no doubt, and Amari Stoudemire and others. But the fact is, Steve Nash was never a league MVP until Mike D'Antoni was coaching him. So let's give credit where credit is due. So we understand that the man pushed the tempo, sort of helped to revolutionize the game of basketball into the modern era where you're seeing guys jacking up shots and playing an up-tempo system that's considerably more entertaining to most basketball fans than the old school form of basketball was. But Skip Bayless, you've accurately surmised over the years and pointed out that Mike D'Antoni, the D in his name needs to be taken out. You need to call him Mike Antoni because when it comes to defense, his teams are religiously non-existent. And when you look at the job, you got to remember, he lost the job with the New York Knicks. He walked away from that, supposedly. But he was 18-24 at the time. They were underachieving. And then Mike Woodson steps in and guides the Knicks to the playoffs. Then the following year, Mike Woodson takes the New York Knicks and wins 54 games, all right, and takes them to the Eastern Conference semifinals. This man can't get a look at a job. But somehow, some way, Mike D'Antoni, suspect job in New York, highly questionable job in L.A., I might add, going 40-32 when he picked them up in 10 games into the season after Jim Buss fired Mike Brown after 5 and used Bernie Bickerstaff for 5 games during the interim. Mike D'Antoni takes over. He goes 40-32 when anybody who knows basketball would have told you that Bernie Bickerstaff could have done a better job with the Lakers than Mike D'Antoni did. Then you come the next season and you go 27-55, coaching the Los Angeles Lakers before you're booted out of there. And primarily because you don't coach defense. Remember the quote, Skip, when he says, of course we focused on defense. We practiced on it for a half hour. That's what he said, okay? This is the kind of stuff that he said. And so when you look at it from that standpoint and then you look at the Houston Rockets, this is a team that was ranked 25th last year defensively, that was dead last in points forfeited last year. And Daryl Morey is on record saying that, we need to, up the ante defensively. And Mike D'Antoni is who you're looking at? Really? It doesn't make sense to me. And I know you got guys like Jeff Bzdelik, who's a former coach in Denver, who's an assistant coach that they would try to get to go to his coaching staff. It just amazes me how some of these coaches get concessions made for them. If you could do it all, that would be one thing, and you just hired your staff. But they're talking about hiring Mike D'Antoni, but also, compiling the appropriate staff for him. What did this man do to get these concessions made for him, other than what he did in Phoenix? That was prior to 2008. We are now in 2016. Coaches that won a couple of years ago can't get a job. This man hasn't really won for 8 years. And you got people giving him second and third interviews and making all of these concessions. I'm just saying, for what? Now, I'm sure that he could be in the right spot and he could do a decent job. I'm not trying to say Mike D'Antoni can't coach. But my last point is this, Skip. He's the same guy that was coaching in Phoenix, even though he was averaging 58 wins, when they acquired Jim Jackson. And Jim Jackson had a turnover. And the guy went down there, whoever stole the ball from him for a layup. And Jim Jackson raced down there to stop the guy after the turnover and fouled him. Mike D'Antoni summoned him over. He said, come in. We don't do that here. Let him score. It keeps the pace up.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
I got it.
So, I just don't understand. I just don't understand.
Okay, help me with one key question. Gut feeling at this moment. Dwight Howard, gone from Houston next year?
Gone.
Gone, okay. That helps clear the air and the decks because, remember, D'Antoni coached Dwight that 1 year in L.A., 2012, 2013, and reportedly... Dwight
didn't want him.
Not a fan. Yeah.
Dwight didn't want him. Dwight wanted Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
And when Jim Buss decided to bring in Mike D'Antoni like a thief in the night after telling Phil Jackson to wait, we'll contact you. We need an answer by Monday, but then gives D'Antoni the job on a Sunday, Dwight knew he was out the door at that moment.
Okay. So now back to the question. D'Antoni's Phoenix mystique lives, and it lives on strongly. Yet it's almost like our favorite argument here, Brady Belichick, who deserves more credit. Did Nash deserve more credit or D'Antoni? I know what you just said. You tried to be fair and said Nash didn't win 2 MVPs before that offense came in. And remember, it was called 7 seconds or less. You're gonna get a shot in 7 seconds or less, and you're gonna go the other way. And you don't really care about what happens when you go the other way. To your Jim Jackson story point, you just want them, if they're going to score, let them score, and you go back and make another 3-point shot. And remember, Daryl Morey loves for his teams to shoot 3-point shots. 2 years ago, last season, they led in 3-point attempts. This season, they were second to Golden State in 3-point attempts. So he will be happy to have D'Antoni asking everyone to jack it up as quickly as possible. But now back to the Phoenix mystique. Was it Steve Nash? To me, it was more about Nash than about D'Antoni, because I don't think you could have had 7 seconds or less without the quarterback, the all-time great quarterback that Steve Nash was, penetrating and dishing to the snipers out on the
but Steve Nash had been around the league for a while, including in Dallas, and even though he was effective, he wasn't who he became until D'Antoni arrived. So I'd be remiss in neglecting to give D'Antoni significant credit for that. I'm not saying that Steve Nash isn't Steve Nash. I'm just saying I'm going to respect D'Antoni enough to recognize that he had a lot to do with the success that Steve Nash enjoyed.
Okay, so what's going on now in Houston? I don't know if you know anything about that assistant who's now in Toronto, Rex Kalamian. Do you know who he is?
I do not.
Okay,
I do not.
So he was Scott Brooks' lead assistant in Oklahoma City. He was there for 6 years with Scott Brooks. Last 2 as the lead assistant. Reportedly, Daryl Morey is looking to bring him in with D'Antoni as the sort of associate head coach, maybe the defensive coordinator. But Kalamian was reportedly, and I don't know anything about this, he was reportedly close to James Harden and close to Kevin Durant, or got along well with both of them. So
my question is, why not just give him the job?
I agree with you. I thank you. But there's some mystique about D'Antoni's offensive genius that Daryl Morey, being the analytical wizard that he is drawn to. I think that he wants to be able to work with D'Antoni because they are like-minded in the way they view basketball as a numbers game more than an eye test game.
My response would be this. Daryl Morey needs to be very, very careful, because our eyes need to be on Daryl Morey. He was the guy that fired Kevin McHale 11 games into the season. He was the guy that Dwight Howard reportedly stated, you know what? I was told by him, you're not getting the ball more. You're not going to be a part of the offense, after electing to give this man $88 million. And so, therefore, because he's the architect, he's the GM, he's responsible for the dysfunction that ultimately sifted through this organization like a virus this past season. Not Tad Brown, not Leslie Alexander, Daryl Morey. He's the guy that went out there and brought these guys on and got rid of who he wanted to get rid of, et cetera, et cetera. So he needs to be very, very careful about what he's going to do here. D'Antoni, Skip, is an incredibly nice guy.
He is.
I mean, he's a salesman, man, because, you talk to him, it's impossible to root against him. Yeah. It's impossible to just sit up there and be, oh, man, I don't like him, whatever. He's really, he's a bit different, don't get me wrong, but he's classy, and he knows a thing or two about offense. I just don't think he gives 2 cents about defense. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be a head coach in the game again. But in this particular situation, I would beg to differ. And more importantly, I'd like to know, how is it that Mike D'Antoni is being considered for a job ahead of Mike Woodson when Mike Woodson was his successor in New York, and Mike Woodson did a better job than Mike D'Antoni did?
I'm with you.
I don't understand that.
And remember,
that makes sense.
The owner early on seemed to be intrigued enough with Kenny Smith of TNT, former Rocket, champion, that he brought him in, and they had some talks about, could Kenny be the next head coach? You and I both like the idea. If Kenny liked the idea, Apparently, Kenny didn't love the idea because he's got one of the great gigs in all of sports
He
broadcasting.
don't need that job.
No,
he don't
doesn't.
need that mess.
But then there's a Jeff Van Gundy who also has a great gig right now in sports broadcasting, but a former Rockets coach and current Houston resident. And apparently no interest there. So I don't know. Now it's back to recycled Mike D'Antoni.
I just think that if you're looking for an assistant to pair with the head coach, that's an indictment against the head coach, because when you talk about a head coach, you usually trust the head coach to pick his staff. But here you are not only trying to pick a head coach, but you're trying to formulate a staff for him. So essentially, Skip, it's the NFL equivalent of hiring coordinators without a head coach. True. You be one coordinator on offense, you be the coordinator on defense, you handle things on special teams. I'm sorry, a head coach is supposed to be the individual overseeing all of that. Whereas in this case, it appears to be Daryl Morey, and he's looking to do it with Mike D'Antoni. And oh, by the way, if you're Mike D'Antoni, it's a long way from Phoenix, ain't it? Because when Steve Kerr was running the Phoenix Suns, that's all Steve Kerr and them wanted Mike D'Antoni to do. They wanted Mike D'Antoni, Skip, to bring in Tom Thibodeau as your defensive wizard. And Mike D'Antoni refused. So suddenly, now you're willing to do these things when before you were in Phoenix winning 58 games a year, you didn't want to listen then, but you want to listen now. It's just, it's unbelievable. But meanwhile, he's still getting looks. But you got guys like Mike Woodson and others, they can't get us. And Mike Woodson, I'm going to repeat it, succeeded Mike D'Antoni and did a better job with the Knicks than he did recently. And people are bypassing that to go 4 or 5 years earlier than that to what Mike D'Antoni did in Phoenix to justify him being a leading candidate for the job right now. Only in America. Only in America.
Very interesting. Skip, real quick, do you think they're trying to get KD? Any chance that they'd be able to?
If Rex has, and I don't know this, but if Rex is close to KD, obviously that would be a tie that they would embrace. So, sure, I'm sure. Who wouldn't want to have Kevin Durant?
Yeah, no, let's just see if they ever could. All right, Steph Curry, though, exploding in the third quarter of Game 2. The guys will let you know if that is a sign of things to come. That is next.